Greetings, I'm Simbwala, and I'd like to share with you some of my stories. Probably the most influential person in my life was my mother. There was a way that she gave me a great amount of freedom. When I was a child, I could dance on the coffee table, I could climb, I could jump. I do have to say I love to climb up on the roof and just look out into the stratosphere. And I did get in trouble for that. My father did whip me for that, and I think that they probably were joined in that, but there were many ways in which I was given freedom. And then at the same time, I had to toe the line. So I got to be free up to a certain age, and then when I got older, 14, 15, 16, things changed, and I had to become a responsible young woman. Probably the next most influential person was my brother, Kenneth. He was older than me. He was 8 years older than me. And I could always count on him. I trusted him, and I could share who I was, and he just loved me. We went to the movies together. We went to see Bambi. He took me to see Bambi. When he was about 15, he and his friends were driving and drinking, and they got caught. And my brother got in a whole lot of trouble. When he came home that night, he got a beating, and it was the first time ever I remember either of us getting a beating. That didn't happen in the house. We got disciplined. We got whippings. But a beating, it was an intense message that my father was trying to give to my brother. And then what they did was they sent him to military school. So for a year, he was gone till he was about 16. And then when he came home, because he was really smart, really, really smart, he went to college. So at 16, he was sent to Nebraska. Now, I understood, okay, drinking and driving, you get in trouble, you got to be disciplined, you got to be punished. I understood that, but Nebraska? Where was Nebraska? We were in Texas. Where was Nebraska? I didn't understand it, but I was only about 8 years old. So it was a quandary for me, and it seemed like from that point on, he was out of the house. He no longer lived there, and he would come and go, but it wasn't like it was where he lived. So I really got this message, the main message I feel like was transmitted to me from my mother by way of my brother, was to stay in the lines. Don't get in trouble. Don't do anything that you shouldn't do. And for me, that meant if I was going to do something, I had to hide. I had to keep it inside. I couldn't share it with anybody. I couldn't tell anybody. And so that began my nightly excursions outside. I would climb out the window and just walk around the neighborhood. I loved the feel of the cool air on my face. That's where I met my dog Rusty, was out on one of my nightly excursions. And I did that for many, many, many years. We moved from Fort Worth, Texas to Dallas, and I still would take those nightly walks out and by myself. And I don't know that my parents really ever knew because I always waited until they were asleep and the house was quiet. There was an important need that I had for freedom. And there was an important message that freedom was not always yours to have. And it made me wonder, it's like, what and why? And I understand deeply, 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 growing up African American, being black in America. So many cautions, there's like safety can at times be dubious. And so you have to, my mother grew up in Mississippi, right? She was born in 1920, and she grew up in Mississippi in the 20s and 30s. And she got married and moved with her husband, with my birth father, moved north. They went north. So growing up in Mississippi, I can only imagine that there were certain, even though they had a lot, they were a family that owned property, owned cattle, had farm, had a mill, a grain mill. So they had experience. They were a large number of children. They had 12 children, my grandmother and grandfather. So they had a large family, but they had the means to take care of everyone. They had the means to send them to schools, to send them to colleges, to send them to teacher schools. And so I think my mother, in many ways, loved being a Southern young woman. And when she left, she was happy to be gone. And then she had this daughter who was a wild child. And she had to somehow contain me, tame me. And I did my best. I really did my best. I sometimes wonder what came out of that in my heart. Fear has been a constant companion. I think I've been afraid of many things, and that fear has kept me, believe it or not, in a small place, in a tight place, in an unsure place, in this effort to be safe. And safe not on the outside, because I've been safe. I've never been attacked. I've never experienced some of the cruelties that can happen. But on the inside, when so much depended on the love that I was given or not given, for my sense of self, fear was my constant companion. My hope and desire is that I now embrace that fear. It's not something I push away. It's not something that I freak out about. The fact that I'm afraid and I feel it in my body. I feel it. There's a way that I've taken it and I embrace it. And it is also excitement and joy and fear and love and peace and passion. So I invite you, if you, like me, have known fear all of your life, and kind of, of course, yeah, there's fear. And then there's this companion. Then when something takes you out of your comfort zone, something that you go, you see, and you say you want it, and yet, will you let yourself have it? If you know that fear that keeps you small, that keeps you hoping for safety and hoping that someone will love you eventually, just as you are. I know I love you, and I too have felt small, and I too now embrace all that I am. Take good care of your hearts.